all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos and friends to review films, either current or classic. This week we're coming at you with not one, but two films from the current column. We are reviewing Richard Linklater's newest outing, Hitman, available on Netflix right now, as well as The Watchers, the premiere movie from M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, Ishana. Bless you, Jim. He muted his screen, he muted his audio, but I'm calling it out anyway because that's the polite thing to do. So bless you, sweetheart.
Happening again.
Uh-oh. All right, we're going to introduce Will first this time then to give Jim a little time to get through his block of 3 sneezes. William Lindis is with us on the show this week. Hey, Will, how's it going? All right, well, go ahead.
No, it's as always good to be here, especially for a twofer. We got 2 movies on deck tonight. Whether we like them or not, we'll find out soon. But I always love the process of going to the movies and talking about those movies. So in that regard, all movies are kind of good movies, right? So I'm excited to chat about these movies with you and see where they landed with you.
Hey, Will.
Yeah.
How are the movies?
All movies are good movies.
Yes, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I adore you, William Lindis. Well, there's many reasons why, but that's just one of them. You also heard from him. He's joining us from his post-sneeze attack, Jim Pugliafico, whom I also love and adore. Babe, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I might be mid-sneeze attack. You never know with these things, right? Like they usually for me they come in threes, and we've had 2 now, so there could be another break here. But I'm doing all right. Been a busy time. We got some movies to talk about, which is good. It's kind of an odd time at the movies right now. We're kind of in the middle of summer blockbuster season, but a couple of the blockbusters that are out right now just aren't too much on our radar. There's a lot of family fare going on, the movie If and so forth. But we've settled on 2 more less blockbuster, more adult fare kind of thing for this show. So I'm looking forward to getting into these 2 with you guys.
Well, looking forward to that as well. But talking about getting into it with 2, we would be remiss if we did not mention that our very own William Lindis is getting into it as 2. They, I believe, Will, there are some impending nuptials happening for you this weekend.
Oh,
is that correct?
That's right. At the time of this live recording, which is on a Tuesday, this upcoming Saturday morning is our wedding, which, we've been engaged for a few years now as we've been kind of going through the pandemic, figuring out the other side of it, what we want to do with it. And so we finally got our shit together and got something on the books, and we're really excited.
Yeah, there's a lot to be excited about for you guys. Of course, you've been together for a while, but there's just something about taking that step of connecting on the level of marriage, and it is special. And I hope that your day goes awesome. I don't know exactly what you got planned, on the day or around that time, but I hope it's great.
We're going really low key. We really didn't want to do a big ado of everything. So we've got we're doing Justice of the Peace. We've got a few family and friends coming to do it with us, and then we've got kind of a lunch kind of as a group, everyone afterwards, and we're kind of leaving it there. We're even pushing our honeymoon back until we just have so much stuff going on. We didn't want to try to stress and try to squeeze something in amongst everything else. So we've got some plans for kind of like early next year to do our honeymoon, just when it's like a better time, so we can really enjoy like a really good trip.
Yeah. Well, Will, so happy for you and Wiggles. We've been very blessed to know y'all for really, really long time.
Yeah, 13
uh,
years. Yeah.
13 years. I was just doing the math in my head. But super, super jazzed for y'all to tie the knot. Alex Fogel in the chat says, happy for you two. Is it a shotgun wedding? Will there be shotguns involved?
There, look, we're getting married in Texas, but there's no rifles, no shotguns. I will take exactly one and no more kind of Yosemite Sam types outside, sort of doing the two pistol in the air dance. No, I mean we've been engaged since November of 2021, so 2.5, almost 3 years we've been engaged. So it's just really been a matter of, it's
finding the right time.
Finding the right time when
Yeah.
it's always really easy to find reasons to push something back. You got work trips, festivals, different things coming up. So we found a good time on our schedule and said, okay, this is when it's going to be.
All right, excellent. Well, the next time we podcast with you, you'll be married. Oh my God! All right, I got to stop talking about it. That blessed union. Is that a siren?
Marriage.
That is a siren. Yeah, they decided to come and get us before we could go.
I thought maybe it was
Princess Bride references.
I thought maybe it was wedding bells.
It could be. It could be. I hope those aren't the wedding bells.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, we have two films that we're going to talk about tonight. We mentioned Hitman, as well as The Watchers is our second film. There's so much to dive into. Will, Jim, are you fellas ready to jump into it?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's put out a hit on these movies.
We are going to be talking about Hitman, Richard Linklater's newest film, now on Netflix. Spoiler free for about 7 to 8, 10 minutes, maybe. We'll see where we come down. We'll give you our very brief initial impressions, and then we'll dive into spoilers. If you haven't seen it yet, don't worry. When we say no spoilers, I actually mean no spoilers. Other shows say that, and then they spoil the shit out of it. I don't understand, but we promise not to do that. So if you haven't seen Hitman yet, hang out with us. We'll give you those initial impressions, and then we'll let you know when to step away. Here we go. Our discussion of Hitman. All right. Well, given that the director is in Texas and you're in Texas, it seems pretty fitting to have you introduce this one for us. What the hell is Hitman, and what did you think? Is this worth watching on Netflix at the moment? Is this something just to skip if it pops up in your list? What's your recommendation?
Yeah, so Hitman is a romantic comedy with sort of some crime drama elements, but it's a rom-com, essentially, is kind of where it fits best. Written, directed by Richard Linklater, Austin's own Richard Linklater, Dazed and Confused, the 4 series, and the movie that I think this would probably borrows most of its DNA from, Bernie. Stars Glenn Powell as this professor who works part-time for the local police department. And what he does there is he pretends to be a contract killer, a hitman. So as part of these sting operations for people who are enlisting these services of a hitman so that they could then, quickly pounce on them, send them to jail, yada, yada, yada. He's finding more and more success in this arena until he comes across a woman who enlists his service and needs and maybe has some ulterior motives for this particular meeting. I think that this is a pretty darn good movie. It's not a great movie, but it's a good movie. The thing about this movie is that you kind of have to buy into it as a rom-com first and foremost, right? This is the type of movie where I think if you're looking for something meaty or something that's weighty or something that's heavy or something that's just dripping with gravitas, you're not going to get it here. But that's not what this movie is. This is a rom-com. What it's trying to do is it's setting the stakes for, yes, why are these two people maybe sort of like careening towards each other or away from each other, and what are some of the kind of the risky circumstances that exist sort of on the peripheral of that relationship. Glenn Powell is the lead here, and he's someone we've seen for a while. You know, he's shown up in a lot of things recently, but this really does feel like him putting his mark as like not just like an actor but a movie star. And what I mean by that is not to say that this is like one of the all-time great performances or anything like that. He plays a lot of like sort of like little roles in this, and it's fun to see him try different caricatures on. But more than anything, this movie exists just on the back of Glenn Powell's just overwhelming charisma. This dude could stop traffic with a smile, and we get to see that smile all through this film. And he has great chemistry with the lead that's counter to him, Adria Arjona. I think the two of them have really palpable, sexy energy together. So I think this is a very good watch. It's on Netflix, so it's not going to cost you a bunch to like go into the theaters and do anything there. This isn't a, you know, there aren't any like killer shots in this. You know, this isn't one of those things where it's like, oh, you know, the script really sings, the cinematography really makes everything work here. This is, you know, it's well put together, but you know, it's not flashy. It's just cozy. This is a good cozy movie, which is, I think, what fits best for Netflix. If anything, if anyone were to say, do you need to go see this in the big screen, which it had a small theatrical showing. I mean, I'm always a proponent of that, but maybe not here. You know, this is one that I think really feels great for date night on the couch. So yeah, like kind of in that 3.5-star range. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I don't know that I'm necessarily going to carry this movie with me forever, but it was perfect for exactly what I needed it to do for a good date night.
All right. Well, thank you so much for those initial thoughts. Jim, how about for you? How did this one hit, man?
How did it hit, man? Yeah, so this one, look, I'm a huge Richard Linklater fan. Most of his stuff I really liked. Even when he remade the Bad News Bears, which was kind of a strange one for him. But you know, look at he's all over the place, right? He's made School of Rock, which is you know, an iconic comedy film. The Before series is one of my favorite movie trilogies ever put together, and I think that's great. Of course, Dazed and Confused, his breakout film, was like a landmark piece. And so, you know, and then there's Boyhood, right, which we saw, and I really loved that one. It kind of didn't, I don't think it got the legs that it deserved, but I really loved that film. I loved the humanness of it. And here he is doing kind of more of a comedy, romantic comedy. There is some drama in here. There is some crime element in here. But I wouldn't say that's the strength of the film. I think this is I don't want to say that this is like a lesser Linklater movie. I think his filmmaking is fine here. And he does have a history of writing stories with his actors, right? Yes. And he does that here. Glenn Powell does get a writing credit here as well as Richard. So, you know, he's kind of sticking with that formula. Will, as you said, Glenn Powell, definitely some charisma. What I liked about this film was I liked the different personas that he was able to put on. You know, as he is playing a fake hitman for the police department. And I liked that element of it. I wish they could have dove into that a little bit more, except they kind of were really focused and kind of in love with their main love interest storyline, which I didn't really click with all that much. I thought the initial character of was it Gary Johnson? Was that his name? The initial dude. I would have liked to have known a little bit more about him. We got a little bit of him, but his personality seemed to be, you know, a great baseline personality for all these other more flamboyant type or of characters that he built off of, and he seemed to be able to flip a switch in his personality to go from kind of milquetoast college professor to badass, badass hitman in different cases. So. And that was a little confusing as to, how is he able to do that? What is his story? As I said, I'm always down for Richard Linklater film. His filmmaking is always great. I'm not so sure the story here flipped my switch very much. I did like Glenn Powell. I think his comedic timing is good. But this is a solid middle of the road movie. But it's available on Netflix. And you're right, Will. If you're on the couch some night and you're looking for something new to watch, this is a good one to flip on.
All right. Well, Jim, thank you so much for your thoughts as well. Are you laughing at the cattail, Jim?
Yes, I am.
Is that what's happening?
Yeah.
Good Was luck that now? Question:
That's the new one.
Is that id or is that ego?
That is either
super ego.
That is either Cora or Katara. We haven't landed on a name for her yet. We just got her today. She's a little over a year old, and she's a beautiful, sweet, friendly, energetic cat that is literally always up in your face for snuggles. But she was meowing very loudly from the base camp room we had set up for her. So I brought her in my office real quick. Thank you, Alex Fogel. He says, congratulations on the new baby. We appreciate that. She's wonderful. If you have any thoughts on which name we should land on, let us know. But all right, so the movie that we're here to talk about, I think I agree. Hitman. I think I agree with you, Jim. There was some good stuff in this, Will. I mean, I also agree. Glenn Powell is really fun here. I do like some of the chemistry between the two leads. I think my issue is it just plays the same note over and over and over and over again until about the last 20 minutes of the movie. And that's where things sort of get a lot more interesting. But then I feel like there's not enough time to like explore that as much as we could have. And that's a little sad. So, without like giving spoilers away or anything, just the number of times that we see Gary like doing his undercover thing, without a lot of payoff. I don't know. I feel like it was just too much. We could have had half hour less of that and still gotten to the same place, but had more time for the more interesting stuff. So the movie's fine. I don't think it's anything too special, which is sad because I do love a lot of Linklater's other films, especially the Before series. To be fair, I did not expect the Before series, type of films coming into this one. Watching the trailer, obviously it was going to be a very different thing, but I guess I expected more, but that's okay. I think this tripped the triggers of a lot of people. It doesn't have to be just for me, but I will say that it was really easy to pause and put down and like come back to like at another time because it just wasn't holding my interest so much. But anyway, what do y'all think about getting into? Oh, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I would never advocate for watching movies in that manner. Typically, I don't like to do that, but this was one I think we watched over a couple of nights, right?
We did.
And so take that for what it is. May not be the optimal way to take in a film, but yeah, that's how we did it.
This is what happened on our couch. Watching the movie, half an hour in, 45 minutes
after dinner.
Babe, did you want to watch something else? Did you want to do something else? Yeah, all right. Let's watch some Deep Space Nine. Let's go figure out dinner, or something else, then come back to it. But anyway, how do we feel about spoilers? Is it time to make that jump?
Let's spoil it.
Let's spoil it up.
All right. Speaking of jumping, the new cat is in Kira's cat bed. We'll see how this goes when Kira returns to it later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And smells new smells. Okay. All right. Here we go. Our spoiler section is officially happening, and you know that it is officially happening because there is now a ticker at the bottom of the screen letting you know that spoilers are totally a thing. This is your chance to step away. Come on back in about 10, 15 minutes or so for our discussion of The Watchers. But Jim, Will, where do you want to start?
Well, Will, I don't know about you, but I got a little bit of this movie. It didn't have the same flavor or atmosphere as a movie like the Coen Brothers' Blood Simple. But I was thinking of that movie a lot in this because it's got a similar plot in that, it's a hit for hire, who's double crossing who. It kind of follows that same, it kind of has that same, you know, plot elements, I guess we'll say. And as to how the movie was going to turn out in the end, pretty surprising that the movie turns out that they're able to get away with murder. And that's kind of, you don't see that very often, where these people, are they're in love with each other, sure, and we kind of like them for that because they have this likable romantic chemistry. But you know, at least one of them is not great people. So you're wondering how this is going to turn out. Yeah, it's weird, right? The husband. Well, I mean, when the husband came into the picture, that's when the movie kind of got really interesting plot wise. When this lousy husband, maybe probably a definitely abusive husband, comes into the picture, and things start going a little haywire. But yeah, I just it did remind me of Blood Simple a little bit, and I just wish it had a little bit more twisty. I guess I could definitely see the ending coming from a ways away, and so I don't know if this movie was more interested in the main relationship and how that came about, or how the actual plot, meaning the story of the hitman and the woman who hires him, how that plays out. I don't know. I think it got stuck somewhere in between for me.
So I think what I liked about it was I think that it landed on the side of this is a movie about the relationship, right? Like that's what
Yeah.
the movie is interested in. And specifically in the idea of, and obviously taken to this sort of like hitman entrapment, contract killer extreme, but the idea of the type of person that you pretend to be when getting into a relationship isn't always the type of person that you are, and how do you reconcile those two, especially when the relationship is moving to new areas? How much do we know each other when we're first dating each other, and how much do we still have to discover about each other? That's where the movie really wanted to spend its time, in that mystery of what's going on with the love interest, how the Glenn Powell character is going to navigate this increasingly precarious position that he finds himself in, not by happenstance, but by his own decisions. Sometimes not great decisions as he goes through all of this. I think what I like about the fact that this is a dark comedy that focuses on the comedy more so than the dark, right? And I said before, like the film that it most reminds me of is the other Linklater film that's in this sort of like style, which is Bernie. Jack Black playing the sort of the guy. It's a small town. There's like a murder, ripped from the headlines, kind of, sorta. But played up for comedy, and the dark elements are used to enhance the comedy there. You get a lot of that here too, especially considering Gary Johnson was an actual guy, but they fictionalized like kind of this part of the story very dramatically. He didn't actually murder anyone that we know of. I think that's
Didn't.
Yeah, or he was not involved in any murders, like in real life. So I think that's where it really worked for me. This movie, and that's what a good rom-com should be. A good rom-com is not about the plot, as much as we want to enjoy like plot in some films, especially like mystery films or certain spy things. This is a story that's about, these two people. And all the great rom-coms, the plot is paper thin, it's just there to sort of be a backdrop for how these characters interact with one another. I mean, think about, your Sleepless in Seattle, it's your Harry met Sally, these types of things. You don't go back thinking about them just like, okay, what the story twists and turns, all this. You kind of land on, how did these characters find each other? How did they bounce off of each other? Not saying this is one of the great rom-coms, but I think that this movie lands in that same space of that's its focus. And I think that's what it does remarkably well.
I think for me, the struggle, I think the struggle is that I don't buy Gary becoming Ron as much as he does. And the sudden decision, we're in spoilers, to kill the other cop just out of nowhere after spending the whole movie and like an hour earlier having a discussion about like how abhorrent movie is or murder is. Now all of a sudden he's like, yeah, let's just kill him. It didn't track for me. It didn't make sense. It seemed more like Ryan Johnson Knives Outy than like Linklater-y. And it just,
5-star?
I don't know.
Sorry.
No, not even close.
Well, that's a whole different conversation.
It was such an absurd, like, just shark jump for that character. And I know this movie tries to like lay the foundation with the whole conversation about like ego and id, and the ex-wife is like, oh yeah, if you act a different way for 3 months, you can change your whole personality, like Chekhov's psychology test. But I didn't buy it. It didn't work for me. It fell really flat. And I think it kind of broke what was otherwise kind of a little bit of a charming relationship for me. But the relationship in itself was also super cringy too. So it was really hard for me, honestly. The more he became Ron, it was hard for me to like him. And the more we saw of her and what she was willing to do. And I didn't like her as much either. So yeah, not for me. But
I think that for me, and this probably says more about me than about Richard Linklater and his films. I think the ones that I really resonate with are the ones that really dive into a character and their motivations. This one wasn't really interested in that. It was interested in a romance of two people, but things like Bernie, as we mentioned, right? Like that was mainly about this one character and his life and how he got to do the things he did, and and the situations he got himself into. It was a dark comedy that leaned into both the dark and the comedy, but it made me feel for the character more. Something like Boyhood, where he focuses on one character throughout the film, and it's really strong. So yeah, I'm thinking about in the Before series, of course, that's also kind of a romantic relationship, but it really, really, really pulls the covers back on both of those characters and what they feel about all different kinds of things. Now, granted, that's a 3-movie series, not a 1 movie. So there's a lot more time to do that. But in the first movie, you get a sense of those characters, and somehow Richard Linklater makes you really like both of those characters very much. Where in this one, I'm not sure the story allows you to like the characters that much. Maybe Gary, but not the female character's name. I forget. Was it Marion?
It
Maria?
was
Madison?
Madison.
Yeah.
Madison, right? She's she's not the most likable character, right? Because we feel for her a little bit because of her situation with her husband, but after that, it's like, God, is she? I thought for sure she might have been playing Ron, or you know what I mean? I thought it was going to come back around. It's like she was playing the double cross on Ron for some reason, but that never happened. But yeah, I don't know. I just I wish I had connected with the characters a little bit more. I think that's where, and again, I think that's me. That's how I connect with movies. If a character is interesting to me, I'll probably like the movie more. I'm
Yeah.
simple like that.
Absolutely fair. It definitely different strokes. This one hit obviously harder for me than it did for y'all.
Uh-huh.
And I think that I've probably seen this one kind of landing just sort of universally in that mid to high range. I don't think that anyone's calling this like one of like the best movies of the
No.
year or anything like that. I haven't seen anything there, but I think what worked also here for me is I think that I had a stronger connection to these characters. Like I liked that we got to see, Glenn play going through the Gary to the Ron and having to sort of figure out where his own identity was between the two, right? And even the idea of like the whether or not he goes into the murder or not, he spends a lot of time in some of the narration going through these like, what would bring someone to do this stuff. And I think he's learning that in real time, like, oh shit, people have stories, not necessarily condoning murder, but at the same time, like, he finds himself sort of thrust in a situation that he had always found himself very firmly on one side of. I just think that's really interesting. And I think that Linklater is just one of those writers who, I mean, I really got to look. I don't know that he's made a actively bad film to date.
No,
I'm
really.
looking through the list.
I didn't
right
see
now.
Where'd You Go, Bernadette. I didn't see that one.
I didn't see that one either, and I actually didn't see the new Bad News Bears either. So
right.
So
It's
I
tough
don't
to
know
remake a classic. It's tough to even.
Yeah,
even
it was
Linklater.
like it was just one of those like I'm sure he does a fine job with it, but I just And I'll be honest, I'm not as high on Billy Bob Thornton as I think some people are. So when it was like him kind of in the lead of that, I was like, I don't know, I could skip on it. But I mean, again, this is on exactly the right platform. This is a great date night movie. We had a fantastic time. Scott started in the kitchen and came in like 10 minutes in, kind of stopped what he was doing and was just glued to the TV the whole time. We had just like a really good little night with it. So I think obviously opinions will vary and experiences will vary, but Netflix is the right place for it, and Netflix is where it's at. So the price is free if you have a subscription. The price is free.
The price is the Netflix price.
Yeah.
Watch
it and see what you think. All
Dave,
right,
I was gonna ask one quick question, and then we can move on.
Sure.
How many star? This was a 3-star. I think you came in less than me. How much did you deduct for Glenn Powell trimming his chest hair?
Half a star.
Because his chest was on display in a lot of the films.
It was.
I mean, he's a sexy dude, right? So
yeah.
But man, trimming that chest hair, that's like a cardinal sin, especially in your book.
Half a star off for that one. All right. Well, we've got a whole nother movie to talk about. How are you fellas feeling about switching gears into a horror film discussion?
Yeah.
Let's watch it.
All right. We are going to shift to our discussion of The Watchers, a new horror film currently out in theaters right now. We will talk about the film, of course, spoiler-free for the first 10 minutes or so. We'll give our initial impressions before we give fair warning and dive into spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen it yet and you're curious what we think, hang on with us, and we'll see you after the jump. But here we go. Our discussion of The Watchers. All right, Jim, if you don't mind, set this one up for us. What the heck is The Watchers, and what were your initial thoughts? Is this something people should see in theaters, maybe wait for streaming, or maybe not even see at all? Where did you come down?
Well, The Watchers is a new kind of paranormal horror film, I guess you could say, from basically a new director or a new name. Well, a new familiar name. How's that? This one's directed and written by, she gets the writing credit, Ishana Shyamalan. And if you know that name, yes, M. Night Shyamalan M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, Ishana, was the director and writer of this film. The film's produced by Daddy-O, M. Night Shyamalan. And so it was interesting going in, not really seeing this film's like, okay, how much of her dad's, directing chops and writing chops are are going to be on display in this film? Is she maybe trying to take things in a new, different direction? Is she totally different? Um, and so that was kind of interesting going into the film. But let me set up the actual film itself. The film is about a young artist who gets stranded in an extensive, immaculate forest in Western Ireland. I don't know what an immaculate forest is, but anyway, where after finding shelter, she becomes trapped alongside three strangers, stalked by mysterious creatures each night. So yeah, this one stars Dakota Fanning, Georgina Campbell, Owen Foyer, I guess is how you pronounce it. But yeah, this is definitely kind of in the same mold as kind of these mysterious paranormal uh, type. Is paranormal the right word? Psychological horror, I guess, for these films, where um, this woman gets she gets lost in the woods. She comes across this group of people that are kind of holed up in this building of sorts in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of the woods, who at night uh, are basically stalked and watched by unseen creatures in the woods. This one didn't really do it for me. I guess where this one falls short is I think I was expecting, and maybe it's my fault. I was expecting more horror. This one was much more interested, I think, in its um, what's the word I'm looking for? It's mythology, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In terms of like who are these creatures? Who are these people? What's going on in the woods? Which by the end of the movie was honestly a bit confusing for me and really diluted the product and I think robbed it of any of its potential horror elements. So,
Mm.
and we did see this in the theaters. I don't think it's streaming yet, but I just, yeah, it was not one that I really liked much at all. So it's unfortunate. I think Ishana has shown that she has, you know, in terms of directing and filmmaking, like how the movie was made. I think it's fine. I just don't think the writing and the story in this one is is its strong point. I think the filmmaking is fine. I
Mm.
would love to see Ishana like branch out and do some new story stuff. Maybe she doesn't have to write her own story. Maybe she doesn't have to, take something that's very similar to what her father would do. I think she's a promising filmmaker, and I want to see her do something next that kind of maybe breaks the mold a little bit. Maybe we'll see that. Maybe we won't. I don't know. But that's kind of what I would hope for. Anyway, this one is not that high on my list of movies watched.
All right, Jim. Thanks so much for sharing your perspective. Well, how about for you? How did The Watchers land in William land?
Uh, this is a frustrating movie because if this were a worse movie, it would be super easy to dismiss it, right? To just
Right.
say, fuck this movie, bad movie, move on. This is a movie that had a lot of elements that I either was beginning to like or kind of was adjacent to enjoying. Like I could see sort of the potential in them, but they fell flat of hitting the mark. And so it's frustrating because what I'm left with is like missed potential, right? I want to talk a little bit about what I did enjoy because again, this isn't a movie that I downright hated. There is a good chunk of this movie which is sort of based around that core premise. These group of people in this sort of closed location where they are in this house with this glass window and then the woods around it, and they're dealing with the things that are watching them at night, right? That is sort of the core of this movie. That is an incredible premise. It gives you a lot of like, what's out there? Why is this happening? How do they escape? What are the rules of this? That's a really good mystery box. The atmosphere and the tension that was built during those sections was really good as they started to, as the characters started to like peel out and kind of like clash against one another as they tried to stress test the environment they were in. Liked all of that. I also like, and I'm going to say it very lightly here, but I do want to flag it, but we'll talk more about it in spoilers. But there's sort of like a core element that this mystery is based on, and I think that that's a neat element to base this on. The kind of like the what the reveal ends up being, I think is incredibly compelling, especially given the setting, given the story. And there's a lot of stories that kind of come really close to telling a good version of that story, and I don't know that we've seen as many of them as I think that maybe we deserve. Here's what didn't work. The dialogue is very clunky. This movie has some pretty rough dialogue through it. Not all the way, but it feels like there's moments where just the characters have to start doing exposition. Especially there's a character shows up kind of late in the movie to just drop a bunch of like narrative backstory on us. And I mean, it's literally it feels like I'm watching YouTube videos of someone explaining the movie story to me. And that's not good. I also don't like
ending explained. The Watchers.
I also don't enjoy the entire third act of this film at all. The film veers into something, and it's not what actually happens at the end that I don't like. I think what actually happens could have been fine. What I don't like is just how matter-of-factly it's put forward and how limp the stakes feel by the time we get to that part. This is the type of thing where I wish that there was someone who could just do a super tight re-edit of this script before it was shot. And I think that there's a good movie here, and that's why it's frustrating. It's so fucking close to being something that I enjoyed, but because it missed those key elements, it fell short. I want to see more from Ishana. I say what I would love to see from her, honestly. I want to see her do sort of like a like a bottle episode style movie, or like a closed set. Like, I think that if you give her 8 strangers trapped in a basement and they have to figure out why they got there and have to get out. She did really good at kind of directing the tension when the spaces was smaller. It's just as the space got bigger, I feel like she just didn't have like the experience yet to sort of grapple that and pull it forward. So I think give her something where she can just sort of play to those strengths and cut her teeth on those interactions. I think there's a really good director in there. We're just not there yet.
You're talking about a movie like, what was the movie we saw with the little girl ballerina murder vampire girl?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So that would be a fantastic style one for her to do, because it's
pretty simple.
Few characters exploring their setting. I think her strength has been in that, at least from the one film that I've seen of hers. Not to pigeonhole her, but I think you learn what you're good at, you get better at it, then you branch out. She needs to percolate a little bit more. So this is a pass for me. And it's a frustrating pass because, again, it's so fucking close, but it's not quite there.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely have to completely disagree with you guys. I don't know what movie you watched, but that movie was fucking No, I can't do it. I can't do it. I was going to be positive. I was going to try, and I just failed. I'll be vulnerable with you and admit that failure. Okay. Hold on one second.
I think the cat knocked you off the air.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
She unplugged my camera. Okay. What are you doing, little lady? She's like, pay attention to me. Okay. Yeah. I'll just be quick so we can bank some time for spoilers. I didn't really dig this movie a whole lot. Be positive. The cinematography was very cool. It did a good job of setting the eerie atmosphere. Even though it pulled some stuff from Resident Evil 7 for the forest, I'll forgive that. Even though, we got yet another movie with like atmospheric spooky music drone shots over a forest. That's like the 12th one this year, I think. It still was pretty and it looked nice. Beyond that, though, it went completely off the rails. Um, it's like a. Do you remember in the days of like copiers? Like, did the teacher ever give you like a sheet to go to the office and like make copies of? But then like the original sheet got, I don't know, messed up or something, and you had to make a copy from the copy. And those copies were like not near as good because there were copies of copies of copies. That's what this movie feels like to me. It's like Ishana just like took a whole bunch of pieces from horror movies, threw them in a blender, and then just whirled them all together and tried to make something, that was interesting. And it just, I don't know. I kept getting taken out by like all the different movies that I recognized in this film. And so I was just like, well, why don't I just go watch those movies? Like, why don't I just go watch Cabin in the Woods? Why don't I just go watch Evil Dead, rather than watching this film? We'll talk more in spoilers. There is something interesting kind of with some of like the folklore and mythology, Jim, that you mentioned that I kind of dug, but I kind of almost was like, what the fuck, really? But yeah, this one's definitely a pass for me. I think I charitably gave it like 1.5 stars, and I can't read my Letterboxd review till we get to spoilers, so I'm gonna withhold it for now. But yeah, this is a major pass for me.
Cool. Yeah, I say let's bank the time and get into spoilers because there's more stuff I want to talk about. Maybe
Yeah.
somebody can
Yeah.
clarify some things for me that might retroactively, rethink my position on the film. But yeah, let's do that.
All right. Well, are you good with going into spoiler town?
Yeah, I mean, we need to.
All right. Cool. Well, we're going into spoilers for this movie. There are a few things that we want to talk about. If you're watching on the live show on the video, there's a ticker at the bottom letting you know that spoilers for the watchers are officially fair game. If you can't see the ticker, I literally just read it out loud to you. So let that be your guide. Here we go. Spoilers are happening. Jim, did you want to talk a little about the mythology thing that you brought up?
Sure. Then I'll circle back to my other thing. I by the end of the movie, I don't know if I just didn't care enough or I was too confused by the way it unfolded, like the mystery kind of unfolded at the end, because it involved fairies and changelings and halflings and like and the humans that are in the and an old professor that's not around anymore. And it's like a lot of stuff tried to come together at the end, and none of it, at least for me, really made sense. I'm just not. Maybe it's because that type of mythology, as presented in this film, just did not seem interesting to me at all. Like, okay, they're fairies. They want people to be in the woods, and then there's changelings, and they're like, they can be this person, or they can be that person, or they can be some flying monster, or so I don't know. But whatever. It was just a lot, and I think that totally, just like I said, I think it diluted the impact of what this movie could have been. Well, if it was like more of what we got in the first 2 acts, you know what I mean, and maybe come to some singular climax would have been great. But it seemed like we had an ending, and then we got out of the woods, and then we went to another place and had another ending, and more of the mythology came into play. It was just, I thought the ending was kind of a mess. A lot of it felt a little tacked on. Maybe you guys can explain why changelings and halflings and fairies are compelling, but in this movie they weren't to me.
I can tell you. So okay, so here's it, this goes to that like sort of like dropped potential, right? Because I think fae are interesting. Just like you have these like these capricious creatures of the woods who have some sort of like otherworldly, magical, whatever it is to them. And their nature is to be sort of at odds with humanity, to maybe do the whole like replacement of the child thing, or to whatever it happens to be. There's a lot of different ways that you can find those variations of that myth. And I think that when they're told well, I think they take something that we kind of gloss over as sort of like cute, like fairies are fun, and say like, oh, actually they're kind of creepy, they're kind of scary, they will, they will fuck you up if you let themselves get crossed by them. The problem we run into here, though, is that this movie over-explains itself. It left no room for the imagination, because we got backstory on how things were before, when the turning point happened for fairies and humanity, this separate type, how they branched off into this other group, now what the professor's doing. So I could sit here, and I'm not going to because it's a waste of all of our time. I could sit here and explain every beat of the story, because they go through the movie and explain it.
Well, I'm glad you could, because even though you say they did explain it, it was still ultra confusing.
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem, because when you over-explain a thing, you take your audience for granted. And when you spell out too many things for them, you don't leave any room for them to have fun with your movie. I'm going to give you an example of a scene that pissed me off. There's this moment where they're running through the woods. They're kind of escaping kind of from the house finally. And they come across this giant grate in the ground that is like basically like the seal that kind of kept all the fairies and the change, kept them below ground when they were banished there once upon a time. And then they stop for a second and they comment on that and they talk about it. I think you could have done the exact same thing, is if they're running by it and then the girl clocks it with her eyes, and then maybe later on or earlier she sees something that gives her kind of something about it, and then we as the audience are sort of meant to put two and two together. Action, and we have to explain, and we have to make sure that there's no room for the audience to play. So, and that's the entire third act. The entire third act is so full of its lore that it doesn't leave any room for like the fun of mythology.
Right. I'm going to explain what Brad touched on a little bit earlier. Like at the beginning of this film, I swear to God, I had a moment where, I don't know if you call it deja vu or vujade or whatever, where I'm sitting in a movie watching the beginning sequence of this film, or close to the beginning sequence, and I swear we had just seen it like a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, we saw this. Are we sure we haven't seen this movie already? And it turns out it was the scenes where, and how many movies have done, I can think of at least half a dozen movies that have done this, where you have a drone shot above the gloomy woods, right, above the treetops, and it's just either following a car down a windy road, or it's like, I guess Kubrick was probably the first one that did that. But like, it's just over the gloomy forest, and it's just a drone shot going. And then, to make matters worse, it cuts to a guy being chased through a forest. We don't know what's going on. He's just being chased through frantically, right? Looking over his shoulder. Some evil thing is chasing him, or things are chasing him. And at the end, he finally trips, falls, and this thing descends upon him and kills him. Like, we just saw a movie called The Strangers, right? Where exactly that thing happened. Those things happened at the beginning of the film. And that's where it confused me. I'm like, this is exactly the same thing that happened in The Strangers. And it didn't, it was very, very weird that it was like the exact same thing beat for beat. Anyway, I just thought that was, I knew we were in for something at that point when, two movies end up with like the same two shots back to back. Weird. Yeah. Just weird.
Hey, Brad, can you tell us about that Letterboxd review of yours?
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, you probably need to be a Star Trek nerd to get it, but my review was basically ugh, changelings and no Jem'Hadar. Jesus. So, well, I don't know how familiar you are with Star
I
Trek.
don't know that one. I hear
Okay.
Jim, and immediately I think, well, he's not talking about in the hologram, so I'm out.
Not that,
no,
no.
no. What's the
Not
next
that
story?
gem.
So in Deep Space, spoilers for Deep Space Nine, there's a series of or a species of shapeshifters called changelings.
Odo was one.
Odo, the character Odo was one of them, and it turns out Odo, because he was found as a baby changeling, nobody knew where he came from. He ends up finding his people and realizes that they are like the most evil, like galactic power ever, called the Dominion. And his changeling founders, whatever you call them, people use this army of like cloned soldiers that are like reptilian pebble faced dudes with like little horny knob protrusions called the Jem'Hadar. So they send in the Jem'Hadar to like fuck people up and keep everybody in order. And so hence changelings.
They are the strong arm
Jem'Hadar.
military branch of the Dominion. Right.
I
Yes.
just looked up Odo. He's the guy that sort of has the like milky
Milk face?
squash face.
Milk
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yes. They
All right.
the changelings basically live as goo, as like a sea of goo where they're all intertwined, and then they can separate and like take any form they want. And so I need to do research. Maybe Deep Space Nine like got changelings from Norse mythology or something. I don't know. I think
Irish
it's Norse.
mythology, maybe.
Yes.
Right? Well, because we saw Norse runes on the radio somehow, the display of the radio when her car shuts down. So I think it's
that's
Norse.
true. That's true.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I'll do some deeper research. But I was just being funny.
Yeah.
The main thing about the review is just the number of stars. And take note, 1.5 ain't great in my book.
And this is one where the least of this movie sins is that it was clockable. And what I mean by that is like they make a big deal about like, oh, it's set in the woods of Ireland, and like there's a lot of like she's talking about her twin sister, and we're like dealing with like, oh, let's look at these reflections in the glass. And so there was a moment about 30 minutes in where I'm like, okay, so this is changelings. So and then it ended up being that, and it was fine because again, that's not the movie's sin. The movie's sin is not doing anything more with it, right? Again, they're a big part of like Irish and Scandinavian like mythology. You can do so much cool shit there, and instead what we get is at the end we get this sort of like special version of it that is also a daywalker who can go out during the sunlight, and now she's sort of like going out into the main world because she escaped too, and there's another conflict. All that stuff just kind of sucked the wind out of this movie, man. Like there is a version of this movie where I think it ends with them. There's a spot where they get on the bus, and then all three of the characters sit down at the back of the bus and just sort of like have this moment of like catching their breath.
We got that ending.
That would have been a fantastic ending. And then there's another 25 minutes of the movie after that where they do a whole extra act. If they got to the end of that and the characters looked to each other and then they looked at these other people on the bus, and maybe they just weren't 100% sure if all of the people were actually who they were, and that's where it ended, that'd have been kind of a cool ending. That's
a
not
cool M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Yeah.
Right.
But instead, we had to just sort of play around with an epilogue that was a third of the runtime.
Yeah. Can you imagine if like the three of them are standing there and they start getting on the bus and it's just the two final girls and the old one stays behind, and they're like, why are you staying behind? And then the old one just changes shape into a different person, and she's like, I have places to go. And then the bus pulls away, and that was the ending. That would have been amazing. I would have liked that so much.
Yeah, it doesn't change. It doesn't change some of the dialogue issues, but what it does there is it gets you to a point and kind of lets you play with kind of a punchy version of that point. I'm always and this is something that I've always felt with horror, and it's something not everyone agrees with this. I'm okay when a movie doesn't hold my hand. I'm okay when a movie doesn't have to explain stuff to me. I'm okay when I get to the end of the movie and I don't have all the pieces, and then I have to sit with it a little bit and put it together. When a movie puts all the it's like watching someone else play a video game when they do all of the pieces for you. It's like, cool, that's fun that you explained everything. I kind of enjoyed that, but man, I didn't get my hand on the ball. I want to take the controller. I want to try this level. So yeah, The Watchers is, again, and I think this comes from the fact that this is her first real script that she's worked on. And it is an adaptation of a book. She didn't write this from scratch. This is an adaptation of a kind of a young adult horror, gothic horror book that was pretty popular. But there's this, and I've seen it with my own writing too. When I've tried to write stuff, I've gotten better, I think, at not having to explain every piece of every detail and just sort of leaving some of it out there. She doesn't do that here. She has to explain every fact. And if we, even the flashback stuff, she takes moments to sort of like flashback to what happened to Mina, the Dakota Fanning character, when she was young, multiple times, and then she has to talk and explain what her feelings are in those moments, and we see it's on the screen. We can experience it. We don't have to have someone commenting on it for us to experience it.
Yeah. Hey, you guys both write. You both writers and enjoy writing. I was just thinking, as Brad was talking about and Will was talking about, like, hey, it would have been a better ending on this movie. Like, there must already be a podcast that does that, right? That takes films that didn't quite land the ending and like and talk about like their idea for a better ending for that film.
Hold on. I'm going to Google right now. Stick the Landing podcast.
While you do that,
there's a podcast called Stick the Landing. It looks like it's about
exactly what I just said
and stuff. No, it's about gymnastics. Yeah, but I was gonna say Stick the Landing would be a hell of a good name for that, right?
Yeah.
By the way, Alex Fogel says there's no right and wrong.
No.
like right.
Is no right and wrong. Only what makes you happy. Right.
Well, this movie did not.
Or not
do that.
There is I would encourage, if you want spooky shit in the woods that also reflects back on someone's personal trauma, there's a super good version of, not necessarily this movie, but that core premise that came out. And it's on Netflix. You can also watch this one right now, from 2017, a movie called The Ritual. These four guys are out in the woods, sort of like on the anniversary of kind of something shitty that happened. And there's something supernatural in the woods that is also dealing with them, and it's interplaying with the trauma of the main character. It's super good. It is fantastic, and it does all of the things that we just said we wish this movie did. It's not a Changeling movie, but it is still like it thankfully captures some of the other things. Oh, there's some good Changeling stuff out there. Just not
this one,
unfortunately.
Not this one. Yeah. All right. Well, some great conversation as always. Even if we didn't like the movie, I had a lot of fun talking about it with you folks. And Alex, we didn't get to read all of your comments. There were a lot in chat, but it was really entertaining to read your running commentary as we were talking this through. He says, but does it play Irish music with drone shots? That might have made this movie a little bit better, I think. So that's a good suggestion.
I don't remember the music it played over the drone shot, to be honest.
It was just like a.
And I could swear we've seen that car radio displaying like rune figures somewhere else before. I could swear we've seen that at least.
Yeah. I don't know. Oh, Xander's drunk and having fun with us. Well, that's awesome.
Hey,
that's great. Well, enjoy your libations, and really glad
you could join us, drunk or not. That's right.
Yes. Always a pleasure to have the very handsome Alex Fogel with us on the show. Folks, I think that's a wrap for this week, but we're going to be coming at you next week. I think Inside Out 2, probably. That's the big one coming out this week.
Big.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Big. Yes. Got to get our
It
tickets.
is. We really love the first one on this podcast, so it'll be interesting to see how the second one goes. But we'll confirm that plan. We'll lock it in and let y'all know. But if folks want to chat with us between now and our next recording, let's let them know how to connect. Jim, where can folks find you online?
Yeah, if you find me on Letterboxd, that's where you'll see my rating, at least for this movie. Sometimes I'll write a review as well. My handle there is at JJP Out West or JJP Out West. And you can also find me on Facebook under my regular, real, authentic name, Jim Pugliafico.
All right. Thank you so much. Will, how about you?
Yeah, just look for me on the different social media platforms. I'm on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. Just look for At the Movie Bear, William Lindes. Honestly, the one that I care the most about is Letterboxd. So look for me there. Everything that I've seen is reviewed there. You can also see my doing the Criterion Challenge for 2024. I let it get away from me a little bit, so I've got a little bit of catch up to do. I just got super the last couple of months I've just been playing a lot more World of Warcraft than I had been before. So a few movies have gone by the wayside, but it's a 52 movie challenge that I'm doing there in one of my lists. So come hang out on Letterboxd. It's fun.
We believe in you, Will. You got this. You can do it. The new kitten is asleep standing up. I mean, she's out, but she's
had a day.
Up.
She's had a day.
She's had a day. Yes, I'm talking about you, pretty girl. All right. So if you want to connect with me, you can find me online. Just look for Brad Harris on Facebook. I am the Brad Harris that likely has chub, chaser, bear, wolf, dolphin, otter, pup, whatever friends in common with you. Hi. And you can find me on Letterboxd as well. I'll do credit to Will for getting me on the Letterboxd train a couple years ago. Continuing to rate every movie that I see there. Like Jim, sometimes I write little reviews. Sometimes they're big and lengthy. Sometimes they're just one fucking line because I can't be bothered to do more than that. But at least I'm rating them, right? At least I'm giving my stars. That's something. It's mostly just for me to be able to look back at what I saw at the end of every year for our top 10 show. But it's fun to kind of compare our ratings and stuff. So feel free to connect with me there. I'm at iBradPro. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. Always a pleasure chatting with you fine folks. And we'll see you all next time. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.